I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. I believe in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, died, and was buried. On the third day he rose again. He ascended into heaven. He is seated at the right hand of the Father, and he will come to judge the living and the dead. I believe in the Holy Spirit, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and the life everlasting. Amen. Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another fabulous day in the Lord's neighborhood, and welcome to another episode of Coffee, the Bible, and Paige. I'm Paige, your caffeine-imbued host. Here is my caffeine. In the beginning, coffee. And lo, it was very good. It was very good. I do like my coffee. Well, today we're picking up the story. We're closing the door on David's reign and opening the door on Solomon's reign. A couple things to consider before we get started with all this. Oh, by the way, my t-shirt says I'm not old. The bottom part says I'm classic. David, for whatever reason, was unable to deal with Joab. We've seen in the last chapter where Joab finally openly displayed his true attitude towards David and the throne of Israel. He threw his cards in behind Adonijah, because Adonijah was the oldest surviving son of David. And in that act, we see Joab displaying where his loyalty resides. His loyalty resides to the throne, not to the person on it. And he perceived Adonijah as being the one most legitimately, having the most legitimate claim to the throne. So, but he betrays his true feelings at that moment. So that's one thing that we have to deal with. Then we have Adonijah. He's the oldest surviving son. He picks this time to claim the throne, and probably it's because David himself was in the last few months of his life, maybe last year of his life. He was feeble. It's very possible. I read one commentary saying that they thought it's very possible that he was suffering with dementia. He was weak. He was an old man. He wasn't governing. He was just there. And so Adonijah thought that this would be a good time, with all that uncertainty, that he could make his shot at becoming king. But as we're going to see, we're going to find out that David's idea of the next king was very much resting on Solomon. Solomon apparently was his favored son. And Bathsheba, as it turns out, was his favored wife. So you can imagine the jealousy and the intrigue and the infighting that must have gone on inside that palace. David's fault for having so many wives. He had to know that this would happen, but maybe he didn't. That was one of David's things. David's thing that I'm noticing is that he did not know how to deal with family. He didn't know how to deal with his sons. His sons were never disciplined. At least from what I can see from Absalom and Adonijah, never disciplined. Amnon, never disciplined. It looks like David spent his time and efforts on Solomon. It was a mess. So David didn't have a good track record of dealing with family. He didn't have a good track record of dealing with his nephews, Joab and his brother. So that's all coming to a head. David gets Solomon appointed as king, and Solomon isn't fully king yet. He's a co-regent, which means he rules alongside of David. But this is like a several month or maybe a year-long transition of power, if you will. And Solomon is acting as co-regent. And as David is preparing to die, he gives Solomon some very specific instructions, which we're going to read about here. So having said that, let's get started. When the time drew near for David to die, he gave a charge to Solomon, his son. I am about to go the way of all the earth, he said, so be strong, act like a man, and observe what the Lord your God requires. Walk in obedience to him, and keep his decrees and commands, his laws and regulations, as written in the law of Moses. Do this, so that you may prosper in all you do and wherever you go, and that the Lord may keep his promise to me. If your descendants watch how they live, and if they walk faithfully before me with all their heart and soul, you will never fail to have a successor on the throne of Israel. Now you yourself know that Joab, son of Zeruiah, what he did to me, what he did to the two commanders of Israel's armies, Abner, son of Ner, and Amasa, son of Jether. He killed them, shedding their blood in peacetime as if in battle. And with that blood he stained the belt around his waist and the sandals on his feet. Deal with him according to your wisdom, but do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace. All right, this is his first piece of business that he wants Solomon to take care of. Why hadn't David dealt with Joab before this? The answer probably is that he was under some kind of familial obligation to Joab. And though David was certainly not lacking in courage, for whatever reason, he was unable to cope with the mixture of Joab's loyalty and his misdeeds. Joab was going to do what Joab wanted to do. David be hanged. And time and again, he showed his heart. And I don't know why David couldn't see this, but again, it's family. Sometimes that muddies the waters up an awful lot. He realized that Joab's murder of Abner and Amasa, and this was murder. This was not an accidental death or a death in battle. This was out and out murder. It could not go unpunished. Solomon did not have the ties to Joab that David did, and didn't have the family obligation, the sense of family obligation that David did with his nephews. So he's telling Solomon to do what needs to be done, but to finally deal the punishment to Joab that Joab was due. Joab had been guilty of sedition in this last attempt with David's other son. So, Solomon, you need to take care of Joab. He goes on to say, but show kindness to the sons of Barzillai of Gilead, and let them be among those who eat at your table. They stood by me when I fled from your brother Absalom. And remember, you have with you Shimei, son of Gera, the Benjamite from Bahurim, who called down bitter curses on me. Well, that day I went to Mahanaim, and when he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death by the sword. But now, do not consider him innocent. You're a man of wisdom. You will know what to do to him. Bring his gray head down to the grave in blood. All right, David had pardoned Shimei. Shimei, when he was fleeing from Absalom, was the one who threw rocks and dirt and cursed him. He was a Benjamite. He's from the house of Saul. So, but David, when he was victorious, was feeling magnanimous, and he told Shimei, I'm not going to kill you for your crime of cursing the king, which was illegal, by the way, and for the actions you took. And apparently, there's things here that we don't know, but apparently, Shimei was a bit of a rabble-rouser, it appears to me, that he wasn't truly repentant, that he still held a grudge against David. And David was going to honor his word. He was not going to kill him. However, he's telling Solomon, my promise to him does not extend to you. I want you to take care of him. Use your wisdom and deal with him. Then David rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. He had reigned 40 years over Israel, 7 years in Hebron, 33 in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his rule was firmly established. How long this co-regency with David and Solomon lasted, nobody knows for sure. Could have been a couple months. It could have been a year or two. But regardless, David was very feeble at the end, unable to govern. So bringing in a co-regent allowed the governance to go forward while the power was being passed from David on Solomon. One matter that is usually lost, and this is an important lesson here. Solomon did not grasp for the throne of Israel. Adonijah did. Absalom did. They pursued the throne. They tried to get it for their own. Solomon did not. Solomon himself didn't indulge in plotting. He didn't indulge in plans and secrets. He allowed God to do what God was going to do. And his accession to the throne was without political intrigue. This is kind of important. This is one of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn in my life, was that when God promises something, God's going to do it his way. God's timetable is not always our timetable. David was anointed king of Israel when he was 12 or 13. Didn't become Israel's king till he was 30. Paul the apostle was anointed an apostle by God, and he went away for 14 or 15 years before he came back onto the scene. Noah was given command to build an ark. 100 years he was building the ark before the floodwaters came. Many, many times, God announces his plans to us, but there's no timetable attached. It falls on us to rest in his plan and let him unfold the plan the way he wants to. Adonijah did not do that. Absalom did not do that. They pursued, they grasped, they clutched after. They went after the throne. See, and as much as it shames me to say it, that was the way I was for a good part of my life. And when I was in corporate America, I pursued leadership. You think, well, that's a good thing. And I thought it was. I always thought the best job to have was the one where you were in charge, because you could impact more lives that way. And I get that. But that wasn't God's plan for me. And in my pursuit of leadership and the paycheck, I left God behind. And in doing so, I brought ruin upon myself. Now, God delivered me. He dealt with it. But I see in Solomon the man that I kind of wish I had been. If I had waited, God had promised me ministry. I tried to make it happen. And it didn't happen until I quit. It didn't happen until I quit trying to make it happen and let God bring it about naturally, in his time, in his way. And there's so much more fulfillment in that. Solomon did not pursue the throne. His accession to the throne was natural. His accession to the throne was smooth, if you will. And I think that is probably the biggest lesson out of this chapter that I've gotten so far. Now let's keep on going. Now, Adonijah, the son of Haggith, remember, this is the son who tried to become king. The son of Haggith went to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, and Bathsheba asked him, "Do you come peacefully?" He answered, "Yes, peacefully." Then he added, "I have something to say to you." "You may say it," she replied. "As you know, the kingdom was mine." Oh, listen. All right, just listen to the hubris. As you know, The kingdom was mine. All Israel looked to me as their king. But things changed, and the kingdom has gone to my brother, for it has come to him from the Lord. Oh, my word. Really, Adonijah? Really? Wishful thinking on his part, I'm thinking. He said, the kingdom was his from the Lord, referring to Solomon. Adonijah claims to recognize the sanctity of Solomon's reign, but his request for Abishag suggests otherwise. This is a very sneaky little move on Adonijah's part. I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me. You may make it, she said. He continued, please ask King Solomon. He will not refuse you to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife. Ooh, he revealed his hand here. See, in the ancient Near East, a large court and family was a sign of royal status. In other words, wives, concubines, lots of children. Now, Abishag had remained a virgin, so she had not slept with David. But she was still considered a concubine. And technically, Adonijah would not be breaking any laws if he married her because she was still a virgin. She had not consummated any kind of relationship with David. But if he succeeded in marrying Abishag from David's harem, this would be perceived by many as giving him a claim to the throne because he married one of the king's wives, or concubines. And this would be an open insult to Solomon's power. So Adonijah is not done planning for the throne. Bad move. Bad move. Very well, Bathsheba replied, I will speak to the king for you. And when Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him for Adonijah, the king stood up to meet her. He bowed down to her and sat down in his throne. He had a throne brought for the king's mother, and she sat at his right hand. Place of honor, by the way. I have one small request to make of you, she said. Do not refuse me. The king replied, make it, my mother. I will not refuse you. Let Abishag the Shunammite be given in marriage to your brother Adonijah. Now, Bathsheba accedes to Adonijah's request to present this request to Solomon. Two possibilities here. One, she was taken in by Adonijah's sincerity. Two, she just went along with it because she knew what Solomon's response would be. I kind of think the latter because she's holding Adonijah under suspicion because remember when he first showed up, she said, do you come in peace? So there was still a danger associated with Adonijah. And Bathsheba recognized it. I kind of think she just went along with him, giving him just enough rope to hang himself because she knew what Solomon's response would be. It's kind of what I'm thinking is happening. And look at Solomon's response. Why do you request Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? You might as well request the kingdom for him because he's my older brother after all. Yes, for him and Abiathar the priest and Joab son of Zeruiah. Solomon sees exactly what this is. This is a grab for the throne. He knows it. He recognizes it. He says, you might as well give him the kingdom. Let's let him have one of my father's wives. Let's give him the kingdom. Solomon knew exactly what was going on here. Exactly what was going on. King Solomon swore by the Lord, may God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if Adonijah does not pay with his life for this request. See, it wasn't the fact that he was just asking for a wife. This was a grab for the throne. This is another case of sedition. Now, I don't know if Joab was behind this. I kind of think he was involved in all this nonsense. And now, as surely as the Lord lives, he who has established me securely on the throne of my father David and has founded a dynasty for me as he promised. Now, that's an interesting statement here that he has founded a dynasty for me as he promised. In other words, at this point, Solomon had a son, Rehoboam, who was going to be the next king of Israel. So Solomon was seeing the dynasty that was promised to David coming to pass. Adonijah shall be put to death today. So King Solomon gave orders to Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he struck down Adonijah and he died. All right. And Adonijah was ambitious and was not yet done with his hopes for gaining the throne of Israel. And asking for the hand of Abishag, he was almost certainly not pursuing romantic interests. He was pursuing the throne. It was another act of sedition. You hear him saying, the kingdom was as good as mine. The people wanted me. The people saw me as king. But Solomon got it. Oh, well. Gosh. Can I have one of David's wives? Can you see it? Can you see it? Well, to Abiathar the priest, the king said, go back to your fields in Anathoth. You know me in these names. You deserve to die, but I will not put you to death now because you carried the ark of the sovereign Lord before my father David and shared all my father's hardships. So Solomon removed Abiathar from the priesthood of the Lord, fulfilling the word the Lord had spoken at Shiloh about the house of Eli, where Eli's descendants would not care for the ark. That's what happened back in 2 Samuel, I believe, or 1 Samuel. This is the last of Eli's descendants that would have anything to do with the priesthood. When the news reached Joab, who had conspired with Adonijah, though not with Absalom, he fled to the tent of the Lord and took hold of the horns of the altar. King Solomon was told that Joab had fled to the tent of the Lord and was beside the altar. Solomon ordered Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, go strike him down. All right. This is, talk about hubris. The reason Joab was going to be executed was not just for his partnership with David's brother who tried to take the throne from him. He was to be executed because he was a murderer. He was a self-serving, position-grabbing murderer. And he had murdered 2 other generals that David had himself appointed at times. Abner, right? And Amasa. And he had murdered them because they were taking power away from him. And this is about the murder, the senseless murders of those 2 individuals. Now, for whatever reason, David couldn't deal with it himself. But Solomon is about to finish up this piece of business. It's amazing to me that it appears to me that Joab is under the impression that what's about to happen is all about his association with Solomon's brother. And he's completely forgotten about the fact that David was still angry with him concerning the murders of Amasa and Abner. When Joab went and grabbed the horns of the altar, that was a rule that said that if there was an accidental death, you could go to grab the horns of the altar and be under the protection of the altar while the matter was being settled, so that the angry relatives of the person you accidentally killed wouldn't kill you in their anger. But this is about murder. This is about not accidental death, not death in war. Joab was a murderer. So, Benaiah entered the tent of the Lord and said to Joab, the king says, come out. But he answered, no, I will die here. So Benaiah reported to the king, this is how Joab answered me. Then the king commanded Benaiah, do as he says, strike him down and bury him, and so clear me and my whole family of the guilt of the innocent blood that Joab shed. The Lord will repay him for the blood he shed, because without my father David knowing it, he attacked 2 men and killed them with the sword, both of them, Abner son of Ner, commander of Israel's army, and Amasa son of Jether, commander of Judah's army, were better men and more upright than he. May the guilt of their blood rest on the head of Joab and his descendants forever, but on David and his descendants, his house and his throne, may there be the Lord's peace forever. So Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, went up and struck down Joab and killed him, and he was buried at his home out in the country. The king put Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, over the army in Joab's position and replaced Abiathar with Zadok the priest. Then the king sent for Shimei and said to him, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there. Don't go anywhere else. The day you leave and cross the Kidron Valley, you can be sure you will die. Your blood will be on your own head." Now, Solomon's wisdom here is pretty interesting. The way he applies David's instructions. I didn't realize this, but by forbidding Shimei to cross the Kidron Valley, Solomon kept him from his kinsmen, from Saul's family. And so by separating him from the family, there would be less opportunity of another revolt against David's house. And so he basically orders Shimei into exile. So Shimei answered the king, "What you say is good. Your servant will do as my lord the king has said." And Shimei stayed in Jerusalem for a long time. But 3 years later, 2 of Shimei's slaves run off to Achish, son of Maacah, king of Gath, and Shimei was told, "Your slaves are in Gath." At this, he saddled his donkey and went to Achish at Gath in search of his slaves. So Shimei went away and brought the slaves back from Gath. Didn't even give consideration to what Solomon had told him. When Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and had returned, the king summoned Shimei and said to him, "Didn't I make you swear by the Lord and warn you on the day you leave to go anywhere else you can be sure you will die? At that time you said to me, 'What you say is good, I will obey.' Why then did you not keep your oath to the Lord and obey the command I gave you?" The king also said to Shimei, "You know in your heart all the wrong you did to my father David. Now the Lord will repay you for your wrongdoing. But King Solomon will be blessed, and David's throne will remain secure before the Lord forever." And the king gave the order to Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck Shimei down, and he died. Shimei had taken grace lightly. Taken grace lightly. He had demonstrated an unrepentant heart, and for this he would die in strict accordance to the terms of their agreement. Solomon now has taken care of all of David's issues that had plagued David throughout his reign as king. Joab is gone. Joab's brother is gone. Shimei's gone. Solomon has taken care of all those who would stand up and threaten the throne of David. The kingdom was now established in Solomon's hands. Wow. Tomorrow, I think I will address my overall feelings about David. I want to wrap up the life of David as much as possible. And I have learned so much about David in going through this. I've learned so much about Paige going through this. I'm always overwhelmed with the grace that God has extended towards me in showing me things through the scriptures. It's every morning when I set out to do these devotions, I swear on a stack of Bibles, if it meant anything. I don't know where the devotion's going to go. I don't plan these ahead of time. I know some people say I should. Maybe they'd be more effective. Well, you know what? I'm not doing this for you. Please don't be insulted. I'm doing this for me. I read this chapter for the first time this morning. I read through it once. I went to a commentary I trust and a study Bible I trust. Took a few notes, just not notes on application, but just notes that I could, that gave me additional insight into what was going on historically and culturally and that kind of stuff. But I didn't look at this ahead of time because I'm as interested in hearing what I have to say about this as maybe the one or two of you that are listening are interested. It's an adventure to me to read the Bible and see what God is going to show me. I have gained so much insight in going through this whole process. So I hope that there's some value in this for you as you watch me think with my mouth open. And I hope that you get something from it, but truth be told, I'm in it for me. And God is changing me through the devotional reading of his word. And I am so incredibly grateful. All right. Well, that's a good place to stop. Tomorrow, we're going to just do a summation of David's life. And I'm going to be thinking about that all day. I'm going to think about that one ahead of time and try to gather my thoughts on David and wrap up his life. All right. This is Paige. Here's my coffee. Folks, I'm out of here. Have a great day. Bye-bye.